This is the Schnitt Show.
I still can't update my Instagram account. Do you think it's any coincidence that Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all platforms owned by Facebook, run by Zuckerberg? You think it's any coincidence? You had that whistleblower on 60 Minutes last night, leveling some really incredible allegations against the company. You think it's any coincidence that now we've got a bunch of the Facebook platforms that are down? I cannot refresh my feed. Last updated 11 hours ago is what, because I just attempted a little while ago to refresh. I haven't had time to mess with it today, and it's still not working. So I haven't even really navigated through this to see, can't refresh the feed. So the last actual feed item that was in my feed was 6 hours ago. In my feed, I follow a bunch of Instagram watch accounts, like wristwatches. I'm a huge watch fan. So I've got a bunch of those in there. And 6 hours ago is the last time one of those feeds refreshed with something new. And then my personal feed, I have not gone on there. All my posts, I haven't tried to go on there for apparently 11 hours. Or the last time that it was updated was 11 hours ago. That's about right. I think I might have just hit a refresh like when I woke up this morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's about right. Somewhere in that vicinity. So what's going on? I'll get into the whole Facebook thing and the revelations coming up in just a bit. The Supreme Court new session and its opening could be landmark breaking. This is potentially one of the most significant Supreme Court sessions in decades and decades. And it happened this morning. The Supreme Court of the United States began its brand new 9-month term. We've got major cases on abortion, religion, gun rights, all on the docket. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the first time that the Supremes have actually met at the Supreme Court in 18 months because of the global pandemic, because of COVID. We have Justice Brett Kavanaugh, Associate Justice Kavanaugh. He's still out. He's not in person. He's participating remotely. He's remaining in isolation until he's free and clear of COVID-19. He was diagnosed through testing late last week when the news broke that Kavanaugh had tested positive. The word is we're still hearing that Kavanaugh remains symptom-free. I got to believe that they tested him, probably retested him, and I would imagine that he's still testing positive, or they're confident enough with the tests that were taken that they were not false positives, that they were accurate, and he just didn't have any symptoms. And as I've mentioned, I did on Friday's show, and I mentioned even earlier today, that I'm sure the fact that Kavanaugh is asymptomatic is much to the chagrin of many liberals, many Democrats that, sickly and morbidly, probably hope that Kavanaugh died of COVID so that Biden could get a crack at appointing a new Supreme Court justice. I mean, as sick as that sounds, I'm telling you, that is morbid, that is twisted, that is sick. But you know what? There were Kavanaugh haters. There were liberal justice proponents that were hoping that Kavanaugh's case would become symptomatic, turn really, really ugly, put him in the hospital on a ventilator, and then lights out. How sick is that? And don't swipe at me for bringing this up on the show. Some things have to be said because they are being discussed or they're being thought about. Some people might be too embarrassed to say the quiet part out loud. So I'm saying the quiet part out loud on what some sickos are thinking. If you don't think that that's the case, well, you have no idea where we are politically. That is sad. That is sick. That is disturbing. that is morbid beyond description, but I'm telling you right now that is true. That they're going, oh, damn, oh, shucks, can't believe he's got a mild case, it's asymptomatic, and, well, he's going to be fine. We're in a crazy world. All right, so let's look at some of the biggest cases before the Supreme Court this session. And this is some serious stuff. First, we have Dobbs v. Jackson. And Dobbs v. Jackson, it's a women's health organization. This is the most anticipated case this term. If we were to pick the feature presentation, this is it. Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. The Supreme Court will take up Mississippi's ban on most abortions after 15 weeks. And, of course, the ban out of Mississippi, this is a direct challenge to the landmark 73 Roe case. This is right at Roe v. Wade and the ruling that legalized abortion nationwide. The Mississippi ban is not quite as draconian as the ban in Texas, in which the Supreme Court did not intervene, but this case puts it all on the line, basically asking the court to nullify Roe v. Wade and those protections. The justices are set to hear this case, this doozy, in December. So either way they rule, the case is going to have massive implications across the entire United States of America. You got a dozen states have these so-called trigger laws waiting that would ban abortions entirely if Roe is overturned. So, biggest case of the session. The oral arguments will occur in December, and then we wait for a decision. Either way, whether Roe v. Wade is upheld or whether Roe v. Wade is essentially shot down, this is quake-inducing in this country. So that alone makes this just that case all by itself makes this the most significant Supreme Court session in recent memory, in decades and decades. All right, next case is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, Incorporated, versus Bruen. And in this particular case, the court is going to hear an NRA-backed challenge to New York's restrictions on people carrying handguns in public. And if the 6-member conservative bloc sticks together, or even if one of them actually peels off, the ruling would likely set into motion a dramatic expansion of gun rights in the state of New York. And all I have to say to that is hallelujah. I'm so excited. I got to be careful on which F word I use here. I just make sure I say freaking. I had to pause right there because this is significant. And what would this do as far as other states with just ridiculous restrictions in place? Folks, you know what they say. The police do a wonderful job, but in some cases, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. Got that? Yeah, the police can be there very quick in many, many occasions. But when you're in a split-second situation and you need the ability to defend yourself legally, and you're dealing with seconds, and the cops are minutes away, 2-3 minutes, that's a hell of a fast response time. But is it quick enough? In some cases, no. And this is where you need to have Second Amendment privileges and rights that expand to wherever you are, wherever your person is. Significant case, and I'm hoping that this goes the way of giving New Yorkers constitutional rights to protect. You look at New York City, for instance, and to own a shotgun in the boroughs of New York. You've got 5 boroughs. You've got Manhattan, Staten Island, you've got Brooklyn, you've got Queens, and you've got the Bronx. In New York City, on those boroughs, it is virtually impossible to get a carry permit for a handgun or to have a handgun in your home. Now, you can get a shotgun, you can get a rifle, but the hoops that you have to jump through are enormous. It could take over a year for you to get a permit to have a shotgun in your house. A crime-ridden city that crime rose exponentially and dramatically under that bonehead de Blasio. The whole defund the police movement and having police power stripped back to appease angry mobs and protesters. And look what's happened to New York. Look at the crime rate. Look at the murder rate. Everything is shot up. I mean, it's like every 8 minutes, some crazy nut pushes somebody in front of a subway train. All right, it's not that bad, but you get the point. And, you know, I was there for years, and I'm not just talking the talk. I walk the walk. And it's just unfair constitutionally that, especially in New York City, you're screwed. But then in other places where you don't have the draconian measures to limit some handgun or gun usage or the right to bear, there is a problem with the right to carry. So this could open things wide open, and I sure as hell hope that that's the case in New York. Oh, but what's going to happen? Look, folks, you're dealing with law-abiding people. You'll have the law-abiders able to carry. The bad guys, the crooks, they're already carrying. They already have their guns, whether they're stolen, whether they're ghost guns, whatever the heck they are. You know, we're dealing about lawful individuals and the right to carry. So I'm pushing all the way for a favorable ruling in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, NRA-backed v. Bruen in New York. Now, oral arguments on the hopefully dramatic expansion of gun rights in the state of New York. Oral arguments on that case begin in 1 month on November 3rd. Next case. What about religious rights in schools? Hold on to that thought. We'll get into that next on Schnitt. Stand by.
Schnitt Show. Click on the Schnitt list every day at schnittshow.com.
Moving down the list of really significant Supreme Court cases as the new session began today, the other significant case of note is Carson v. Macon. And the Supreme Court is set to weigh in on religious rights in schools in a case that challenges the state of Maine's tuition assistance program, and that blocks taxpayer money from being used to pay for tuition at religious schools. And those arguments are set for early December 8th to be exact. And just to expand on that a little bit, in Maine, and I did some research over the weekend on this, in Maine, you have roughly half of the school districts in the state of Maine. I think it's something like 143 out of 260 that do not actually operate a public high school. And then the state operates a program where these districts pay tuition up to the official state statutory limit for students to attend a public or a private high school. So you have statutory limits of public funding that can be used for the students that are in districts that don't have a public high school. That money can be used for a private high school, but not for a religious school. So the question is that fair? And that's what's going to be looked at and decided here. Incidentally, if you care, this Carson v. Macon case out of Maine, this essentially is a follow-up to a case out of Montana, Espinosa versus the Montana Department of Revenue, if you care to go into the weeds on this stuff. So, I mean, right there, again, we could have stopped with the Mississippi abortion case, and that is big enough to be a potentially ground-quaking session. Then you add the potential for gun rights to be just vastly expanded in New York State. Now you have this religious school funding case. And then what else can we add? Well, how about a nice terrorism case? How about the United States, the people, v. Tsarnaev? Yeah, that son of a bitch. Yeah, the pressure cooker Boston Marathon bombing survivor. Yeah, his brother, who was shot and dragged under a car by his own brother, by the way. He still did not die nastily enough after what happened to those victims, especially that little 8-year-old kid. All right, hold on. We'll talk about the U.S. versus Tsarnaev next.
This is The Schnitt Show. The Schnitt List is on SchnittShow.com.
Also coming up, where does Joe Biden stand on activists following Senator Sinema into the bathroom to harass her? This actually came up today when Biden was speaking earlier, and President Biden took questions from the press. Yes, we will probe the bathroom incident in just a bit here on Schnitt. All right, just wrapping up here. Oh, you know what? I don't think I've given out the phone number today. Just a jammed up day. 800-801-8999. That is how you join us on Schnitt. Comments, questions, agree, disagree. 800-801-8999 is how you get in on the program. The other massive Supreme Court case, and you remember the Boston Marathon bombing, it's the United States v. Tsarnaev. This is the surviving Tsarnaev. This is Jahar, not Tamerlan. Tamerlan was killed in a police shootout, then dragged under a car by his very own surviving brother, who, remember, he was holed up in that boat in someone's backyard. Yeah, that boat was riddled with bullets. I don't know if you just get some of that Flex Seal from that guy Phil from TV and patch. Hi, Phil Swift here for Flex Seal. Look, this boat was completely shot up with this little terrorist bastard, Jahar Tsarnaev. And look, it's floating again, even though it had 3,500 bullet holes. So the Supreme Court, I'm sorry, but I wish they would have taken this guy out. I mean, I can't believe we're dealing with this. Anyway, if anyone deserves the death penalty, Jahar Tsarnaev. Anyway, the justices will decide in that case whether the death penalty can be reinstated for the Boston Marathon bomber Jahar Tsarnaev. Now, he and his dead bro, they killed 3 people. They wounded hundreds more after planting those pressure cooker bombs near the finish line of the Boston Marathon back in 2013. And currently you have Jahar Tsarnaev. He's serving a life sentence after an appeals court last year dismissed his death sentence, finding that the judge in his 2015 trial failed to guarantee a fair jury due to extensive media coverage. Give me a break. And then back in June, the Department of Justice asked the Supreme Court to reinstate the death penalty. That's good. That's a Biden Justice Department to reinstate the death penalty for Tsarnaev. And an interesting move, given that, Biden is the first sitting president to publicly oppose the death penalty and has said that he wants to end the use of the death penalty at the federal level. So that's also interesting here that Biden has not instructed his attorney general, his DOJ, to drop this case. Nope. Biden's DOJ is pursuing a reinstatement of the death penalty, which is the right thing to do. And the White House says that the Department of Justice has independence, this is a quote, independence regarding such matters. But I suspect that Biden's not losing any sleep over the possibility of this piece of garbage getting the death penalty. The Biden administration's action on the appeal to the Supreme Court was launched following a request, by the way, from former President Trump last year before leaving office. And the arguments on this one are right around the corner. This is going to be within 10 days. This happens on October 13th. And you got to remember, you had an 8-year-old kid that was killed. You had a happy 8-year-old kid at the very end of that finish line in the Boston Marathon back in 2013. Do you know that kid? We are, 8 years later? That kid would be in high school right now. That 8-year-old kid would be 16 years old. Martin William Richard, an 8-year-old boy. Those Tsarnaev brothers, those terrorist bastards, they had no regard. They didn't care who they maimed, who they killed, with those pressure cooker bombs filled with ball bearings and nails and metal shrapnel. The report was that poor little kid was nearly blown in half by the explosion. You had Christy Marie Campbell. She was a 29-year-old restaurant manager. She was from Medford. I was just in Medford, Massachusetts a month ago. And we stopped in to see a friend of my son. We were taking my son back up to boarding school in Connecticut, but made a trip first for the Labor Day weekend to see my daughter up in New Hampshire. And we were driving up, and one of my son's schoolmates is from Medford. In fact, his dad's a Medford police officer. And we stopped in Medford. So I was just there. I don't know the restaurant in which she worked, but you had a 29-year-old restaurant manager killed by the first pressure cooker bomb. Then you had that Chinese national. Her name was Lu Lingzi, and she was a Boston University grad student. So those were the three. You had a 29-year-old, you had a 23-year-old, and then you had a little 8-year-old boy. All killed. And then you had a total of 264 people that were injured. So there were varying degrees. 264 people were treated at a couple of dozen local hospitals in the Boston area. You had amputations. The one thing here, the authorities, the doctors, they told, really nasty stories. Doctors took out metal ball bearings, a little bit larger than a BB for a BB gun. So these bombs were packed with they were just trying to inflict and maim and hurt and kill as many. What kind of a sick human being blows up these devices packed with little ball bearings, a little larger than a BB? That also they used carpenter-style nails, the carpenter-style nails. And they range from like a half an inch to a little over an inch. I think an inch and a quarter were the size of the carpenter nails that they placed in these pressure cookers. If anybody deserves to die, if anyone deserves to get the federal death penalty, it's Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. And, of course, his brother Tamerlan, he already got the death penalty. And it was a nasty death, which included him being run over by his very own brother. You know, that whole, remember, they killed I think it was a Cambridge University. Was it Cambridge? I'm not Cambridge. Harvard, rather. Was it a Harvard? I think they killed in Cambridge. They killed. I think one of the first deaths. They killed a police officer. Didn't they steal his gun? Yeah, it was I think it was a Harvard security guard. No, MIT. I'm sorry. It was not Harvard. It was MIT. It was an MIT campus police officer who was murdered. So if anyone deserves to die, it's Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. And then regarding his brother Tamerlan, I'm just trying to remember this. They got into a shootout, and Tamerlan, the older brother to Dzhokhar, the survivor, he was hit by multiple gunshots. He was still alive, I believe, in the middle of the road. And then his brother, Dzhokhar, who we're talking about now, got in the car and sped off and plowed over his brother's body. And if I'm not mistaken, his brother's body got lodged underneath the car and was dragged. So that was an appropriate way for Tamerlan to go. You know, turned into Swiss cheese in a police shootout, and then boom, run over by his brother, and then dragged underneath the vehicle for some distance before the body got ejected from underneath the car. Bravo. So I'm glad that the police, in combination with his very own brother, trying to flee the scene, I'm glad that the death penalty was inflicted on Tamerlan Tsarnaev. Oh, by the way, Sue's telling me that the MIT police officer's name was Sean Collier. Yeah, now that Sue shows me that does sound familiar. Yeah, I thought it was Harvard, but no, MIT. It was an MIT police officer. So, yeah. Hopefully the death penalty will be reinstated for that terrorist weasel, this Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. And then just kind of wrapping up here on the last extremely significant Supreme Court case, it's going to be the Federal Elections Commission, the FEC, versus Ted Cruz for Senate. Yeah, so what's this about? So Ted Cruz, or his reelection committee, to be entirely accurate, is arguing that the federal rule limiting the use of post-election donations to repay candidates' personal loans violates the First Amendment. And the FEC says that the law is designed to prevent the appearance of a quid pro quo type corruption. Quid pro quo, essentially Latin for something. Quid pro quo, Clarice. Quid pro quo. You tell me, I'll tell you. That's, remember, Dr. Lecter had the little quid pro quo going on with Clarice Starling. Tell me, Clarice, do you still hear the lambs? Oh, man, what a great movie. That's one of those movies I can't turn off. If ever I'm flipping through channels, even if that's on regular TV with commercials, you know those movies that if you are flipping through TV And even though you know that the movie's cut, you know that it's been edited, you know that they've bleeped out the language, but you just can't turn the channel. I got a series of those movies. You know, Silence of the Lambs is one. The Blues Brothers is another, even though I've got like 13 copies of Blu-ray, various editions of the Blues Brothers here at the house. Can't turn off the Blues Brothers. Oh, The Breakfast Club is another one. Caddyshack is another one. So I got a handful of movies that, even if it's on regular commercial television where they're taking commercial breaks every 10 minutes. What was that, Andrew? Yeah, oh, yeah, Fletch is another one. You know, Fletch, Caddyshack, yeah. Blues Brothers, Breakfast Club. Yeah, those are some of the movies I can't, I got to watch. I'm glued. It's like I'm magnetized. I can't break away. Yeah, so the FEC and Ted Cruz, that the claim here is that Ted Cruz's for Senate Election Committee, they're saying that this rule, this FEC rule, is a violation of the First Amendment. And again, they're saying, nope, they just don't want there to be any kind of quid pro quo here. And the arguments on the Ted Cruz case, those are slated for early next year. And again, most likely don't look for decisions in these major cases until at least the spring. But some of these could be end of session, late June, early July blockbusters. So we'll see what's a shaking. But those are the big moves on the Supreme Court's docket. And this has the makings, folks, to be the most significant Supreme Court session in decades and decades and decades. 800-801-8999, the nationwide number here on Schnitt. 800-801-8999. How about Biden commenting on Senator Sinema being followed into the bathroom? These activist protesters. So you got liberal activists who are badgering a Democratic U.S. senator in the ladies' room. Hold on. We'll get to that coming up on Schnitt. Stand by.
The Schnitt Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, we take pride in presenting
Schnitt.
What do you say we do some bathroom humor? I mean, literally. I mean, what do you call it? If you've got crazy nut job activists that follow Senator Sinema from Arizona into the bathroom, reporter almost sounds like Ducey's kid, Peter Ducey on Fox, asking the question.
Mr. President, you're talking about how you have 48 Democratic votes right now. The other two have been pressured over the weekend by activists. Joe Manchin had people on kayaks show up to his boat to yell at him. Senator Sinema last night was chased into a restroom. Do you think that those tactics are crossing a line?
I don't think they're appropriate tactics, but it happens to everybody. From the only people it doesn't happen to are people who have Secret Service standing around them. So it's part of the process. Yes, sir.
So there you go. So Biden just commenting. You have these nut job activists that followed Senator Sinema into a bathroom, and they were badgering her over the fact that she and Manchin are standing in the way of this ridiculous $3.5 trillion behemoth of a socialist's dream. And then also, do I have time? Let's see if I can see how much I can get this in. Also, at the same time, first of all, it's amazing. I think it's breaking news that Joe Biden was allowed to take questions from the media today.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've often touted your experience in the Senate, your 36 years in the Senate. Your aides have talked about your abilities to be a closer on deals involving legislation. Why were you unable, Mr. President, to close the deal with members of your own party key parts of your legislative agenda?
Oh, look at the smirk. Look at the Biden smirk. It's a very fair question. So why couldn't Joe Biden close the deal? Now, and then Biden says, I've got 99%. Well, thank God for Joe Manchin and Sinema that they're just trying to whip this thing into a much better situation. All right, back in a moment.
The Schnitt Show.